getting to the content, I wanted to acknowledge that I'm giving this presentation from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of Musqueam people. And for me, coming to campus every day is a reminder that I need to learn about the stories of people who have lived on these lands before me. But more importantly, that any space that I enter, people come into them with their own personal stories, and a daily reminder to just be kinder to others. We're going to put a link in the chat if you want to learn more about the history of people who have lived on these lands before. You can check the link and learn a bit more. And I'm also going to ask you to please scan the QR code or use the link that we put in the chat to let us know that you are here. This will enable us to send you the recording of the session after we're done, and also a post survey. We want to do better every time we do this launch program. So it would be great to hear from your experience, but also you can enter a chance of winning a $25 gift card. I'm just going to give you a few seconds so you can sign in and let us know that you're here. I'm going to also put the link closer to the end of the session. So if you have not had a chance to sign in, you can also do it then. So what are we going to talk about today? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the current trends we are seeing in the labor market. I'm going to teach you some of the research techniques you can use yourself to gather some of this information, and talk a little bit about, so we have done all of this research, we have all of this information, how can we actually use that for our own career development? So I said in the beginning of the session that I'm going to talk about labor market information so you can use it in your career decision making. But what is actually career development? As a person, we bring a lot to the world. We have different interests, talents, strengths, skills, beliefs, and values, and we don't use all of that in our career. So what part of it do we actually use? Well, the labor market also has certain needs. People and companies look for a specific type of skills, people with specific type of motivational orientation and interests. And our career lies within the intersection. So what we bring to the market, but also what are the needs of the market. With that said, so what is labor market information? And before me giving you an answer, can you start putting in the chat what you think labor market information is, or use the annotate button to actually type on the screen, so that way we can see each other's answers. And if you don't know where the annotate button is, if you look at bottom of your screen, there will be share and then annotate. Any thoughts about what labor market information is? Who is hiring? Yeah. Trends in salaries, yeah. In-demand jobs. trends and opportunities in the job market. Any other thoughts? Current state of employment, unemployment rate, wages, job growth or decline, skills in demand, education and training requirements, roles being lost to automation. We're going to talk a little bit about AI in a few minutes. The qualifications needed to apply for a desired role. Yeah. Different sectors in the market. Yeah, so you all have it, right? I'm just gonna clean out the drawings. So labor market information is basically any knowledge, fact, or data or insight that we can use to make decisions about what we can learn, what skills we can gain, what type of education we can go through, training, and what are some of the workplace choices. So the information is basically going to help you increase that overlap between those two graphs that I showed you. Some of the things that market needs and what we bring. How can we increase this overlap? That will be through using labor market information. So one of the first sources of labor market information is the news. We hear a lot about different trends that are happening in the market, different companies that are coming to a specific region, and we can use those information in our advantage to understand the market better. And there are generally two types of information that we hear in the news. One is higher level policy decisions from government or investment decisions by companies, or more granular information like a small company hiring, a new location of a brand opening in our region. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit of what I have been hearing these days in the market. So a really big manufacturing news for Canada, Volkswagen and its battery company PowerCo will establish its first overseas gigafactory for battery cell manufacturing in St. Thomas, Ontario. And that's a really big win for Canada because it shows the vote of confidence in Canada's ability to kind of support the future of green technology, and also all the implications it will have for creating jobs in the region, but also potentially other companies that are gonna start kind of working in the region because of Volkswagen. There has been a lot of work ongoing to bring manufacturing back to South Ontario. So this has been a really big news these days. And I heard also BCIT will receive 14.5 million in funding to support aerospace and biomanufacturing training. And the Minister of International Development mentioned that this is because of the labor shortages that we're seeing in these areas. So that signals that if you have skills that are relevant to these fields, there will be potentially in demand in BC, because that funding kind of signals that we are now lacking people who are trained in these fields in the region. On a higher level, we heard that BC added around 8,000 jobs in January, despite all the catastrophic news we heard about tech. So 15,000 jobs were lost in tech, but then overall, still the region added around 8,000 jobs in January. We're seeing the market slowing down. So BC added 6,700 jobs in February, but still just showing you a scale of jobs that are still available, despite all the news that you hear about the job losses. And some more granular news I heard. So BC Parks is hiring park rangers for the summer. So for instance, if you're looking for a summer job and you like outdoors, that might be an opportunity. And Coastal is also opening a new chain. So if you're looking for like a summer job that you can get fast, maybe somewhere to look. So I just wanted to give you an idea of like the news that exists out there, but also how you can use them as part of understanding what is happening in the market, but also some of the more granular information you can get about like recent places that are hiring. Okay, So what do we know about some of the labor market trends that are gonna impact people's career trajectories? So I wanted to first talk about a number of jobs that exist out there, because we hear a lot of bad news about, well, there are no jobs out there. There are a lot of layoffs happening. That is true, but let's put that a bit into context. So this table shows job postings on the Indeed portal based on their level pre-pandemic and now, and comparison between this year and last year. And first, I want you to just look at the column that I have highlighted. So there you can see the growth in jobs compared to pre-pandemic levels. And you can see in sectors such as software development, although we're seeing a lot of layoffs, there's still 17% growth in number of job postings compared to pre-pandemic levels. In banking, there are 50% more jobs compared to pre-pandemic levels. So you can see that, well, right now in the market, there exists more jobs than it existed 3 years ago. And then a bit to more of the bad news, we see less jobs than last year. And most of the kind of reduction in jobs that exist are in sectors who grew a lot during the pandemic. So sectors like software development that grew a lot during pandemic have also been hit the hardest. But remember that, yes, there are not that you get the news of all the layoffs, and most of them are based on kind of last year, right? Like jobs that existed last year, jobs that are being lost this year. But to put it in context, like there still exist jobs, and there are more job postings now than they were 3 years ago. So something to just keep in mind. Okay. One of the other things to keep in mind is that we are gonna have a tight labor supply. So in Canada, because of the low fertility rate and also increasing number of people who are gonna retire, one of the challenges of the economy will be finding workers. And Canada uses international talent as a way to fill the labor shortage gap. And that's important to keep in mind, because I know as international students, you might have concerns around, okay, so are they gonna prefer Canadian candidates over an international candidate? There are fields such as government roles that because of their process, they have to give priority to Canadian citizens and PRs, but that is not for all sectors. And I wanted to show you a graph so you will have that vote of confidence a little bit better. So this graph shows the change in employment for different group of people compared to 2018. And you see, so the gray graph are international kind of workers. So people who are not born in Canada and are not a landed immigrant, so they don't have PR. And you can see that their employment has increased by 70% compared to 2018. And that increase has only been around 1% for people who were born in Canada and only around 20% for landed immigrants. And that shows that the economy doesn't have the capacity of preferring candidates based on their immigration status. And that is something to keep in mind as you think about companies' policies. Their first priority would be filling out the roles that they need. And that kind of immigration status is secondary. And the other question that might come up is like, okay, but then we don't know in what fields they're in. Based on the January 2023 data, 13% of those kind of employed people who were not born in Canada and not a landed immigrant were actually in professional and scientific fields. 12% were in the retail trade, and then 11% in accommodation and food services, and still 10% in healthcare and social assistance. So you would just get a bit of an idea of, okay, what is the distribution? Let me see question. Okay. Thanks, Irene, for responding to the question. Okay. Someone mentioned in the labor market information, AI and automation. Yes, AI and automation is going to be a labor market trend that is potentially, that is going to affect jobs, mostly ones that are kind of more dependent on manual labor. So automation will shift the composition of skills that will be needed in the market towards jobs that are more highly cognitive, social, and technological, and away from some of the physical labor. So it's going to displace some workers that are in roles that may be more manual, but also move humans to using their skills at a higher level. And I really like this graph from World Economic Forum in terms of tough skills that will be needed in the near future. And if you look at it, if you look at the type of skills, it's problem solving, self-management, working with people, and technology use and development. And if you look at the top 5 skills, they're all in problem solving and self-management. And what that shows is the person that you are is going to matter more and more in the market. The way you uniquely solve problems, the type of analytical skills you bring to a role matters. And I hope that that shows you a bit about what you need to highlight when you have conversations with people, when you send in your documents. You want to identify the unique ways you solve problems, your unique ways of learning different things. How do you approach complex problem solving? How do you bring creativity to your work? I hear a lot from students just saying, well, my skills are not really different than anyone else. I'm at UBC, every classmate that I have the same skill set. Yes, true, but some of those more personal skills that you bring are going to be different. The way you solve a problem can be different than how your classmate will approach a problem. The way you deal with stressful situations can be different. So I hope you get from this that the person you are matters in the labor market, and also give you a bit of context around why employers ask certain questions like, tell me about a time where you had to solve a complex problem, or tell me about a time where you had a conflict with a supervisor and how did you go about solving it. The reason is because those are the skills you're gonna use in your jobs, and they're gonna become more and more important. And one thing to also think about when you think about the disruption of automation and AI is, well, it's not going to necessarily just impact jobs in terms of losses. It's going to also fill in the gap of the tight labor market. So we talked about the fact that we're not going to have enough workers for the roles that we need in the future. So AI is going to actually help us close some of that gap. So not necessarily always depending on the industry translating into job losses, but more as like a help to close that tightness in the labor market. And another trend that you might have seen is remote work. And I think it's interesting when we look at the Canadian data, because we see that before pandemic, remote job searches were only at 1%. So only 1% of job seekers would search for remote roles, but that has now increased to 5%. And before pandemic, only 3% of roles were advertised as remote, but now around 12% are advertised as remote. And that is going to impact you as a candidate in 2 different ways. First, that will increase the number of roles and opportunities that you can apply to. When I was graduating from school, I was looking for roles anywhere because I was also an international student and location was not my first priority. The first role that I was offered was in Ottawa. So I had to just pack and leave Vancouver for Ottawa in a few weeks. But that is not the case anymore. So you can work, for instance, in Ontario, but be located here in BC. It will be a great opportunity. But then also there is a bit of a more competition in those remote roles, because that means that there will be a bigger pool of candidates. anyone from anywhere can apply to that. So also just something to keep in mind. Okay. So far, the data that I have shared with you are from research reports that some of the job search engines put out there. So you might have heard from Indeed or Glassdoor, or you might have searched for jobs through Indeed and Glassdoor, but those engines, as you search, are also gathering thousands of pieces of data. So they also have research teams that analyze the data, that will publish reports around the number of jobs posted, how the market is doing, which I shared a bit of it with you previously, but also government publishes reports that shows the state of the labor market. There is one website, Job Bank Canada, that has trends and what is happening in the regional economy by provinces. So we're going to put a link in the chat. If you are interested to learn about specific provinces, what is happening in terms of labor market in different regions in Canada, you can check that website. And if you are planning to stay in BC and want to learn more about the labor market within BC, you can also go to the WORKBC website. We're going to put another link in the chat. This will have kind of more reports about what is happening in BC's economy, what are some of the skills that are needed here in the region in the future. It's also another resource that you can look into. Okay, so far I've talked a lot, but I want to also give you an opportunity to gather some information about specific fields that you are interested in. So besides some of the general trends that I have mentioned so far, there are websites where you can search what is happening for a specific field. So the Job Bank website that I mentioned earlier has a section where you can actually type the job title that you're interested in, where you're planning to work, and it will provide some information about the skills that are needed in that field, education, salary, some of the prospects of that specific industry in the future. And I'm gonna pause so you can actually go to the link, type your desired job title, and try to answer the following questions. What are the required education or experience or skills? Does the nature of the role, just from what you are reading about what this job entails, salary level or working conditions align with your criteria of what you want out of a career? And look at their prospect. How easy will it be to get a job in the future? And when you go to the website, you can actually see the prospect by region. So it helps to see, okay, where is this job more in demand within Canada? And then we're going to come back and share what we learned through the process. So maybe you can take like 5 minutes to look at it, and then we will come back and then discuss. And I will monitor the chat. So as you go through the website, if questions are coming up, feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, is there someone who needs more time? Okay, what were some of the things you noticed? Did you find anything that was interesting or surprising? Yeah, there were lots of new job titles I never knew. Yeah, so if you are not in part of your career where you know what job title you're looking for, I think it's also a good just opportunity to look at what are some of the things that exist, like what are some of the job titles that exist and what do they entail. Yeah, the level of detail, like prospect level, median pay. The prospect level was really interesting to me too when I was first looking for roles, because especially in terms of the regionality, because I have heard like rumors or information from people in my field about where most of the jobs that are in my field located, but just that prospect also gave me a better idea of like testing some of those assumptions or information people have been given me. Job bank seems like a good resource for job searches. I never took it seriously as opposed to LinkedIn and Indeed. Yeah, correct. I think there is like less known resources for looking for information. Anything else you noticed? Okay, seems like there are no more thoughts. Okay, so other than that kind of government website, there's also a WorkBC website that has the same type of information. So you can explore career profiles. There is a function that has basically all the career titles from A to Z. So if you're looking for something, if you don't know what job titles you can actually look at, that is kind of a good laundry list of all the careers that exist. There is a career search tool where you can just type the title of the role that you're interested in and get information about it. And I'm going to also give you a bit of a chance to look at this and maybe do a little bit of comparison of the information you're gathering from here versus the other website. And sometimes, like depending on personal preference, we're just more comfortable with using one search engine versus another. So there are two things we can do at this point. One is you can look at the career track video. So the WorkBC website also has the information about job titles in a video format. So if that is a more engaging way of consuming information for you, you can go there, or you can look at the career profiles, look at your own, look at the job title that you're interested in and get some information about that field. And then we're also going to come back and share what we noticed, what was different, which one do we prefer. Okay, does anyone need more time? Top occupational interest and recent job postings were two features I found interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And then with that comment, what are your thoughts? So what did you notice going through it? Was there things that surprised you, was interesting? Yeah, resources for job seekers. Yeah, there's some more resources on that website that you can use. Anything else? The videos were a nice touch, felt personalized. And I think it's valuable, especially if you prefer just another way of consuming information rather than just reading through things, basically. Okay, how does the annual salary in HR department pays more than finance services? I mean, because when you think about the financial sector, it does include a lot of different parts, basically. And I think just because we think about finance services as a sector that is responsible for managing money, that doesn't necessarily mean that they pay more. And also finding talent nowadays is hard. So the HR departments and then retaining employees are hard too. So the HR departments play a big role in finding top candidates and also kind of retaining them. I think you can depend if you are interested in the financial services, what you see there is not necessarily what you will be paid, right? You can kind of start digging into, okay, what are different companies paying, what type of role in the financial services pays more, so making it a bit more granular. But just I think also the website is good to test some of those assumptions of, because a sector is responsible for managing money, then they're not necessarily the ones that also pay more. And also we put a link in the chat, salary.com. You can also look more into salaries based on job titles there to get a bit of more insight of that kind of distribution within the industry, if that makes sense. Okay. So we gathered all of that information. What can we actually do with it? So we can use it to develop our job search strategy. So if you have a specific long-term employment goal, being in a specific field, what are some of the things you can do in between to get there? What are some of the type of experiences you can take on so you can build the skills necessary to get to that final employment goal? And then getting some information about the industries that are in demand and growing and some of the available opportunities. So what careers are in demand? What regions have higher kind of demand for a specific skill set? That also gives you some idea of life planning, right? Like maybe I want to be in this specific field, but I never want to live somewhere that is cold. So how am I going to go about kind of setting my career goals, or what are some of the priorities I'm going to set for my career? And what are some of the best job opportunities lie depending on what you value in a career, like region or salary or prospect So kind of combining the information that you're getting with some of the values and interests that you have and what you're looking for in a career. And you can also evaluate some of the available job opportunities, right? When you look at some of the job opportunities or some of the skills that are named, do you have the experience, skills, and education to do that work? If not, then how can you get some of that training and experience so you can actually establish a career in the field that you're interested in? And does the nature of the work, salary, and working conditions meet your criteria, right? Like what I might consider as a good career might not be a good career for you. So kind of combining some of the things we are expecting from the role from some of the things that we are actually hearing from the market. So we talked a bit about resources where you can get a bit of a more overall trends or information, but there were a couple of questions in the chat about, okay, but how will this be for a specific job title I might be interested in, or for a specific company size? You have to complement some of those more aggregated information with informational interviews. So you can get some of that information by having coffee chats with people and develop some knowledge of the industry, some of the recent trends they are seeing on the ground, what those trends mean for a company, right? Like, so we're seeing layoffs happening, but does that mean that those layoffs are happening also in some of the companies you're interested in? What are some of the strategies they are taking to combat the current market? Get a reality check of some of the information that you're seeing. So we saw, for instance, if you looked at the HR departments and then the finance services and saw that HR pays more than finance, getting a reality check of like, what are some of the fields within finance that pays more? Why is the assumption true that financial services pay more in general? So you can also do a reality check of the information you see here with getting information with people who are actually working on the ground, and get some information about how you can get the experience and skills that that job requires. So where can you invest your limited time as students in terms of gaining skills and experiences so you can get into a career that you're interested in? And also build new contacts in your field. And on a personal level, you also develop your communication and confidence in meeting with different people. And just to let you know that those networkings are going to be beneficial for an international student. I remember when I was an international student, it was quite overwhelming to think, well, I don't know anyone in Canada, and people keep saying you need to have a network to be able to land roles. So what does that look like? Having those conversations within themselves are going to bring up opportunities. So you might have a conversation with someone who is in the field of your interest and there's no jobs in that company yet, but 3 months down the line, there will be an opportunity in their company. So you already have had a personal conversation with someone from that team, and that's going to help. And knowing that that networking is uncomfortable, and it's one of those things that you do it uncomfortably. So like an exam that you will take it, although you're anxious, it's something that you need to do being anxious and just kind of push forward for the first times that you're doing it, and use some of the resources that UBC provides. So on the Careers Online, every now and then you will see companies who are going to come on campus to have information session with students. Launch Your Career in Canada provided a lot of networking opportunities, and there will be more networking opportunities within the year. So use some of the kind of opportunities that UBC offers. I remember I wouldn't use a lot of them when I was a student because I was too busy figuring out other things, but you can use a lot of resources that are available at UBC. And I want to close with some tips about how to stand out when the market is tight. These days in my advising sessions, I hear a lot from students saying, you know, there are no jobs. Do you know when are going to be more jobs available? When are going to be job postings? I just want to kind of say it straight away that you cannot control the labor market conditions. So accept the fact that certain factors are out of your control. How many jobs are going to get posted, whether or not a company is going to hire or not. Those are not factors within your control. Sit with that, accept it, and focus on what you can actually do and actively focus on. So what you can focus on in the market that is tight, that potentially a lot of candidates might apply to a single role, is basics of best practices in job search. Send tailored applications to the roles that you're interested in. Make it quite clear how the skills and experiences that you have make you a good fit for that role. You will be surprised by how many generic applications like I guess hiring committees get. So by just making a statement on why you want the role, how your skills can contribute to that role, you will get ahead of a lot of candidates. And you need to diversify your strategies. So if a lot of candidates are applying just with their documents, that having connections with people who work in those companies are going to be one of the factors that are going to set you apart from other people. So if there are a lot of candidates who on the skill level and motivation level, they're saying the same thing on the documents. If I have had a conversation with someone in a career fair as an HR person, where they personally told me why they're interested in the field, I'm going to remember them. So the networking events that we do at UBC, try to attend them. Try to connect with people who are in your field of interest. And remember, all the peers you have in class are also in your field. So if you have a classmate who have had some experience in your field, or you've heard them getting a summer job, connect with them, talk to them. Your professors are also a good source of getting information because they're academics, correct? But they have also seen hundreds of students like you, whom many didn't end up in academia or continued to graduate studies. So they will be able to share what are some of the things they've seen their students getting into, what are some of the strategies they've seen their students using in getting roles, and try to focus on strengthening your portfolio. So use your time at UBC in the most efficient way. Get involved with clubs. Work on some of the personal projects if you are working in fields where having a portfolio can tell a lot about your skills. Take on experiential learning opportunities at UBC. UBC is a really big hire of UBC students. So look at some of the student opportunities that are available. For instance, work-learn applications are now open. There are great opportunities to learn skills, get some Canadian experience you can put on your portfolio, get references for future jobs from a Canadian employer. So use some of the resources that are available at UBC. And there are also some other sources of labor market information you can get. So Vancouver Public Library has some information about kind of employment in Canada. I'm gonna send you the slides so you will have the links to later on look at. And then through Careers Online, you also have access to Going Global. And Going Global is a good resource because it not only has information about Canada, but also around the world. So if you're not thinking about staying in Canada after graduation, or if you want to seek out opportunities outside of Canada, it's a good resource to just get a sense of labor market in different countries and some of the career guides in other countries. So to kind of wrap things up, you can get LMI information from news by looking at some of the job postings that are available, by doing some informational interviews, connecting with people you know in the field, your peers, your professors. So one thing I leave you with is there is no one source of information that will be valuable. You need to kind of diversify where you get the information from so you get a complete picture of what you need to do, if that makes sense. And with that, I'm just going to put the registration link in the chat again. This will give us your information so we can send you the recording, slides, and also a chance to win a $25 Uber Eats gift card. Thank you for joining me this afternoon for the session. I'm gonna stand by and we're gonna kind of stop the recording, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you were not comfortable asking while we were recording.